Chameleon pens, and they are two-sided pens that have two different tips on them, but they also come with an extra chamber with clear ink that you can use to gravity feed the clear ink into the pen tip, and then you can create these really gorgeous gradients and fades of color. So I'm going to be using these in some cooler colors today to do a night scene with this tree illustration that I've done for the stained glass coloring book that's going to be released fairly soon, hopefully at the very beginning of February. Now, I like to pick out my color palette and then give myself a little swatch, because when you're dealing with markers, sometimes the colors on the tips aren't exact to what you actually see on the paper. They just kind of give you an idea. So, and the different types of paper that you use often produce different vibrancies of the colors themselves if you're using markers. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm using cardstock, and I've printed out this image from the computer onto my cardstock here. So this should be the same image that you would use in a coloring book or just using the coloring book itself. Okay, so let's get started. Now I'm going to start on the moon. I'm going to keep the colors for the moon itself fairly muted. So I'm going to go into my neutral gray first. And I'm not doing any fading with this one. I'm just going to be doing some moonlight details. Doing some colors. And this is really super simple. You don't have to be exact with this because it's the moon. And if you wanted to get really technical and use an actual image of the moon, more power to you. All right. Now I'm going to go into my blues to do the night sky. Now these I'm going to keep fairly vibrant, but I am going to start off fading from the moon out. I'm going to be putting the most vibrant color away from the moon so that it'll look like the moonlight is shining. So what I've done is I've taken my tip here, I've attached the clear tip to the end of that, and it's been gravity fed for a couple seconds now. And so I'm going to show you. Now it should start fairly clear. And then as I move away, get more color. There we go. See how beautiful that gradient is? Ta-da! So this is why I love these Chameleon pens. They are just brilliant inventions, and I know that they've got a patent on this right now. So you really can't find this anywhere else but through this company. And that's just wonderful for them. These are alcohol-based markers. So there's a lot of alcohol markers that you can buy, and usually you'd have to use at least 3 different colors. You need a light tone, a mid-tone, and a deep tone to get a nice fade. But with these, you just wait a couple seconds and you've got yourself marker tip all set up to do your fade for you. Just have to be patient. Take your time. Blend with the ink on the paper that's already wet. So you want to make sure that you're almost slightly overlapping your previous stroke. There's another one for you. So this is what I'm doing. I'm taking this marker tip and I'm putting it right in there. And you can see how the tips barely touch. And then I just turn it like this and let the gravity pull that clear ink into the tip. Like I said, I'm only waiting a couple seconds. It doesn't take long. I can go back and fix that. Like Bob Ross always says, we don't make mistakes. We only have happy accidents. And I love that philosophy. One of the reasons why I'm actually pretty excited about the stained glass book is because these illustrations, or doodles as I like to call them, don't have to be colored realistically or perfectly because they're meant to represent stained glass pieces. And of course, a stained glass art piece is basically a puzzle piece that's been put together with pieces of glass. And so every time you've got a different section, it's actually representative of its own piece of glass that's been put there. And sometimes, if your colors don't match up just perfectly, it almost adds to the idea that it's stained glass. Again, this just makes it so much easier for the colorist to create something just gorgeous and resembling stained glass. So here's a good example of what I'm coming over here, but this branch comes in and kind of cuts that off there. And even though it's the same ray of moonlight, and I am going to use the same color, the gradient may be a little bit different. Now I've made it continuous on these other ones, and that's okay, of course. But this one being a little bit different, isn't going to ruin the piece. Now, here is another happy accident where I wasn't really patient enough, so I didn't do the waiting there, and that's okay. It's another part where a different piece of stained glass would have been used there. All right. And I wanted more of a gradient of the rays, more moonlight coming down to the earth than I did coming up anyway. So that kind of helps with the whole nighttime feel that I was going for. All right, so you can see that I've been alternating where I used that blue, and that was cornflower blue. I'm going to go into my indigo, and this is a really deep, rich, dark blue. And I thought it would just be wonderful for my night sky. I'm going to do the same thing. Now this one I'm going to count out in my head, so 5 seconds. Let this do its thing. And we're going to do this side first. Now because this is a deeper blue, I didn't wait a long time. I only waited like 5 seconds. So the lighter section of the fade still has blue in it. It's not the clear, it's not white, closest to the moon, you can see. And that's good, that's what I wanted. Look how much richer that color is. Oh, I love it. Again, this is another part where we've got a ray of moonlight, one single ray of moonlight going through, but it's got a lot of different sections where it would have been individual pieces of glass. So I am going to color each piece as its own. Now for these two, I'm not going to do any fading or clear inking at all. I'm just going to color them in. Look at how gorgeous and rich that color is. All right. Now you want to keep in mind that if you have a shorter distance to go and you are using the fade technique, that you don't want to let the clear ink tip sit for very long. You'll want a shorter fade. Count 1 to 2 seconds. 5 to 10. So we still have that beautiful fade that's happening around. Okay, now with this ray of night sky and moonlight, I didn't get a perfect, beautiful fade. And that was because of the direction that I'm going. When you're using the fade technique, you want to pull away. So the tip should be at the lightest point, and then you're working outward. Now with this one, I didn't get a nice fade because I was pushing against the tip. Not a big deal. I'll show you how to fix it. We're going to take our baby blue, which is our lightest blue that I haven't even used yet. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to push it against that other blue. Alcohol markers, once kind of react, the ink reacts with each other. You don't want to stop, even if you think that you're not really changing the color, because once the ink is dried, if you wet it again, it's kind of like a watercolor effect where you will see like a water stain. But it did fix my little fade there. Maybe that's a detail you couldn't see on the video, but it bothered me, so that's what we did to fix it. We've got 2 more rays here, and then I want to show you something fun. A full 5 to 7 seconds for this one here. Get ready. Again, I'm pushing against the tip, but I've already started. I don't want to stop. So I'll end up fixing this one with the lighter blue as well. I really like using alcohol markers because they don't leave streaks. Like I said, the ink wants to blend with itself as long as it's still wet. So you don't get lines, you just get beautiful color. Now you don't have to get the Chameleon pens to get a fade. Like I mentioned earlier, you can use regular alcohol markers, and they have some sets that aren't so expensive. You just use 3 different tones to do the blending. And I will show you how to do that on this piece also. Not until after we're done with the next guy. Alright, so like I said, I need to fix this fade here. It's not so beautiful. It's not so perfect. It's basically just re-wetting the ink. When you're using such a lighter color, it's not going to make that big of a difference. There we go. Clean my tip. Alright, we've got one last ray of moonlight and night sky. This one I'm only going to go about 4 seconds. Now this little piece down here doesn't need a fade at all. I'm just using straight color ink from the marker. So you just color that in. I've got this beautiful glow going on around the moon by just using a fading technique. Now, the thing I wanted to do that should be fun and add some sparkle to this night sky is by using a gel pen. And this is just a white Jelly Roll gel pen. I know you can barely see the lettering on there, sorry. And you can add some stars. Now you don't just want to go around and dot, dot, dot. You do want to make some of the dots or stars a little bigger. Because some stars burn brighter, especially the ones that are closer to us, right? If you wanted to get super technical and look up some constellations to add in here, that would only just add to your piece. And even if you don't think it's going to show up very well, go ahead and put a few stars close to the moon. Because that light fade that we put in there is still going to, it's either going to allow the star to disappear into the white, or it's going to add just the right amount of contrast to help with the illumination of moonlight. Remember that stars aren't perfectly geometrically placed in the sky, so put some close to the others. Don't evenly space them. Sometimes there are clusters. Sorry, I'm not an astronomer. I don't remember what that's called. See how beautiful and sparkly that looks now? And go ahead and take it in sections. So each piece of glass will have its own unique characteristic. It does add to the whole picture. The glass itself, each piece is usually so beautiful. Yeah, that works. You want to make it look like a brighter star that's shining. I would choose a dot maybe not so close to the moon. And just add some, starting from the center, quick strokes, pulling away. I suppose this could be considered my version of Starry Night for any of you art lovers. Maybe that's what I'll call this one when it's all done. Oh, I do love this. It's turning out so beautiful. I don't know if you noticed, but I only just noticed I have a section right here of blue night sky that I forgot to do. So I'm going to finish this panel with stained glass. And I'm going to do that. Alright, like I said, the lighter rays are done in cornflower blue. So I'm going to take this, color that in, and the darker rays are done in indigo. Get back to my star dots. Now gel pens sometimes get some gook on the tips. So I'll just take a scrap piece of paper and clean it off. That way we can get true strokes and true dots wherever we want them, and we're not suffering with mistakes from extra gel. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm doing dots, I tend to automatically evenly space them. And that might be my OCD. So I've got to go back and wherever things are too evenly spaced and kind of put extra dots closer to other stars. Fix that because has its own way of doing things. It looks so random and it's so balanced. I wonder if anyone knows who does stained glass. I know someone who does. How would you get this sparkly effect in the glass itself? Would you find blue glass specked with clear or white? Question for you guys, and if you know the answer, put it in the comments below. I'd be interested to know. I also realize that some of these dots are so small that you're not going to see them on the video, but I will post a picture in the comments once it's all done. So check it out. And take note of things that maybe you do different. This piece right here has everything way too evenly spaced. So I've got to add a lot of extra little things. Yeah, that's better. When I originally did this stained glass design, this tree, I was thinking, oh, you know, you've got the bright sun behind it, it'll be a big happy, you can do warm colors, big happy scene. And last night was a full moon, but it was the brightest moon I have seen in years. And the light wasn't just the normal cool moonlight cast, it was a warmer cast. And it was so bright, it was like daylight. And I know people say that all the time about the moonlight, but on a full moon. But last night was truly magical. I even pulled Zach out of bed. He didn't want to go because there's mosquitoes. He gets eaten alive by mosquitoes. They don't bother me. My blood's not very sweet. They love him. Alright, we're on our last moonbeam. I don't know if you can hear Roxy. She's whimpering at the door. I totally shut her out because I was in the middle of doing my artwork and I knew I would be doing the video soon. Sometimes she's quieter. She just gets to be in here with me though, so I won't shut her out next time. Alright. We are done peppering the night sky with stars. Cool. Alright, so to go along the lines with, okay, this is earth, this is sky, I'm not going to do green, but I am going to get into the turquoisey colors. And I have a color called Lagoon, which in the Chameleon Pens is called BG1 Lagoon. I don't know if you can see that. And yeah, let me do straight color on this one. And then I'm going to do a fade. Enough to do the top edge, as if there's moonlight beaming off of it. So I've got that first stroke that still looks fairly clear. The second stroke will have a color in it. And it'll look fairly pale, and that is okay. Right. Now because I've got a longer line to do here, I'm going to make the fade time a little longer. Really, it's this first move along the edge where you're putting down that clear ink that's the most important. Because once you start adding the other ink underneath, it'll fade itself in because these markers just... Now see, I don't have a very nice fade right there. It did fade nicer up there. So again, I'm going to go ahead and take our baby blue, which is just a nice light color. Very pale. I'm going to go along the top edge here. I'm really just going to scrub in this lighter color along here. Like I said before, this wet ink is going to blend into the other ink. And that softens those lines right up. Squiggle it in here and see if I can lighten up that edge, but cool. So I've got this one ridge that's the lagoon color, and now I'm going to get into the turquoise, and this is going to seem fairly bright considering we're using so many blues, and this turquoise is going to really pop. It's going to just go right there. Got our first line in. Mostly just the clear ink. There we go. Now, because I've got such a long line here that I'm doing as the fade, where I don't really have short distance strokes, I should say. I don't have short strokes. I have long strokes here. Across there, but it's also, oh, that was a bit of a mistake. There are no mistakes, only happy accidents, we say, right? Choose one color. There we go. I fixed it again with my baby blue. A very light color. All right. I'll go ahead and show you how we do a fade using two different colors, not necessarily using the clear ink from the Chameleon Pens. So we're going to take our lighter color, the baby blue, and go ahead and put down some of that along the lighter edge. And then I'm going to take my turquoise and come up and knead it. And you'll see there's a really harsh line there, but then I'm going to come back in with the baby blue. And while the ink is still wet, scrub at that line. And then I'm going to follow it all the way to the other edge. Makes it a perfect fade. All right, now we're going to go back to our lagoon color for this bottom here. And I'm going to go back to the fading technique using the clear ink from the Chameleon pen chamber. But I've got a fairly long line to do. There we go. Kind of see that? Not really, it wants to focus on me. Sure, that's okay. So I'm letting this gravity feed the clear ink into my tip for a fairly long time. Strokes to put down wet clear ink. And there we go. The other section, because we're not really working with glass. Now again, when you're doing this, you really want to make sure you're barely overlapping your previous stroke so that you've got wet ink touching wet ink. And that way, the fade looks continuous. Ta-da! I really am in love with these pens. They're just so wonderful. I'm going to go back to the moon. I'm going to do a fairly long fade to make it look sphere-like. So I'm going to put my clear ink chamber onto the tip. I'm going to wait a fairly long time. And what I'm going to do shading on a sphere, you leave the light source the brightest, and then you move, of course, towards the edges. For the moon, I'm going to leave the very center. Now, if you have like a ball or something and the light is coming from a certain direction, you want to make sure that the light is more towards, the light is point more towards where the light source is coming from. But the moon is the light source, but we know that the moon is just reflecting. Could be darker to show that it's round. But I'm not doing this with a very distinct gray. It's a very light gray, so I feel like I need to keep that clear on longer because I don't really want a lot of gray in the center. I'm gonna give it a go. Here we go. And that should be a very subtle gray gradient. It's okay if you barely see it on the video. There is a difference here. I can see it and I love it. Okay, so I'm going to keep this tree white. So it'll look like an ashen tree against the deeper night colors. But it doesn't have to all remain, even though I want it to be a white tree, it doesn't have to remain all white and bare. I'm going to use the grays and even some of the lightest blue, the baby blue, to put in colors of stained glass. Like I said, we're working with a stained glass piece. We want it to look like stained glass. So each one of these pieces could be a different shade. I'm going to start with I'm going to start with a fade for fun. And I'm going to fade this gray. It's the same gray. It is the neutral gray 4. Same gray that I put on the moon to make the slight gradient. And I'm going to go from here down so that we have an edge here that's darker. So it'll make it look like the tree is set back into the frame. I'm going to start just at the base of the tree. Too much directions of my tip. That's because the fading ink is already out of my tip and I'm just using straight clear. So it won't make a difference. There we go. Now, to add to the illusion that this tree is set further back, I'm going to take a darker gray, which is Cool Gray 5. I'm just going to do a line right along the edge. Now, my other gray is still fairly wet, so this gray is blending into it beautifully. That's totally fine. Dilemma that, all right, well, yeah, we have a white tree, but this is supposed to be stained glass, so each one of these panels, technically, they look too unified, so they're not very interesting. So now I'm going to take my baby blue. I'm going to go back over the gray, just on select pieces. Now, we do see a bit of a difference here in real life, but I'm not sure you can see that in the video. So I'm going to actually take the lagoon color. This is this color here, but it's going to be over a gray. To mute it even more, I'm going to use some of the clear, but I'm not going to do it very long. There we go. So that piece of glass looks interesting. I'm going to do it again on this piece over here. This piece of glass is going to have a deeper color to it. And because it's got a base of gray, it is going to have a different shape. Go back into some baby blues. I'm just going to tint some of the glass pieces throughout the tree. You can be completely random with this if you'd like, or you can be very calculated. But I don't want it to really be stark difference. I don't want to see dramatic color differences in shades, because I want the look of this tree to be that it's a white tree, like a white ashen tree. I'm going to go back in with this neutral gray 4. So this is the same light gray that I used on the moon. I'm going to show you there's a different tip on this. So the tips that I've been using is this over here. It's a very soft tip, even though it's more pointed, and it's beautiful for blending. This one has a slightly rounded tip. It does have a more detailed tip because it's stiffer. And it's hidden down here. I'm going to take this piece off in order to get to the clear chamber. But that's the clear chamber there. So we're going to leave that on because I'm not going to be fading. What I am going to be doing is taking note of the light source, which is our moon, and adding in some this branch. It would be a line of shadow. Anything that is on the opposite side of the moon, you can give a line of shadow to. And this gray is so subtle that it won't look like you've drawn a dark line there. It'll actually look like it's just meant to be a shadow. And this is why I get so excited when I see sets of pigments, whether they're colored pencils, markers, paints. When I see sets that have the really pale colors, the really subtle ones, I get excited because that means, oh, the blending and the shadows, all the with those, just endless. It just makes an art piece pop. And you can add just something subtle for a shadow. I love it. All right, I'm even going to take this gray. And again, this is going with the idea that, oh, these are individual pieces of glass. And take this gray and color in a couple of these rectangles here. And add to the patchy nature of this puzzle piece. Puzzle. It truly just makes it more interesting to look at. All right, guys, we are mostly done with this night scene with the tree. Now I'm going to do the border. Now, because it's a border, you can really put anything you want there. You could do a high contrast where you've got like pinks and purples. Or for me, I'm going to actually stay with the same color palette, but I'm really going to use my turquoise, this bright color. Even though especially since I used it in the piece, I use the turquoise to help make this other parts of the turquoise pop. And I am going to use this color on the tip again. I'm not going to be doing any fading with this. But I am going to be using the lagoon to alternate the colors with. So I'm just going to do it right here. I mentioned this before in one of my other stained glass videos, and I think it was just one that I was inking. But when you have, I noticed when I was doing like some research on stained glass, and the images that I saw, that the thinner the area of glass, the shorter the piece needed to be. And I assume that's because if you have like a really long piece of glass, I imagine it would break easily. So I didn't make this border just one continuous circle. I broke it up. I'm going to point out a happy accident that I made. I skipped this tiny little spot here, so it's not perfectly alternating. In order to fix that, I'm going to end up using an extra color. Now I've got to decide. I'm going to end up using that color again. So I am. Let's do that. I need to delete this. These extras here. All right, Lagoon. Here we go. Oh, leave it to me. One mistake after another. Happy accident. One happy accident after another. Lavender. I'm going to use a lavender. Right here. Sorry. And right there. But it also means I'll need to put a lavender down here. And I'm just going over the turquoise, which is fine. It'll mute the lavender a little bit. And so oh, I love it, guys. I'm kind of excited about it. So I hope you enjoyed yourself. I certainly enjoyed myself. And I want you guys to check out these Chameleon pens. I don't really get anything, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but they were fun to use. And if you'd like to check out these fading techniques that you can get with these Chameleon pens, I highly recommend it. All right, I've got other videos coming up in the next week or so on how to use these stained glass pieces to do crafty things. So stay tuned. I'll see you next